we'll be starting with extension of pharmacology, but not really. We are starting with oral surgery today. We'll be starting with local anesthesia. Okay? Keep replying to me on chat box because today I'll be a little bit skeptical about the voice. You know, every time you stop talking to me in the chat box, I'll feel my voice is gone. Okay? So, just be active over there. At least keep saying me yes or no. Okay? So, yeah, now you know my, it's not my computer actually and I don't want to mess up with it. I am not habitual of using this as my husband. And so, I'm sorry about that, but we can have a little bit more idea. Bad, right? My system's good, but I don't know what's wrong today. Okay. So, okay, let's focus back, come back from speakers to local anesthesia. Now, as far as LA is concerned, there are few things we are going to skip out here. Like, I'm not going to touch upon trigeminal nerve. Okay. Considering the fact that we are done with ANAT and this is a nerve which we all know. So, I'll not be touching upon trigeminal nerve here. Although here and there we may be talking about it, but not really, you know, about the course and all that. Okay, what my focus is today on local anesthesia, especially related to its, this thing. Siley, are you still delayed? Okay, Siley must be getting my voice after another 2-3 minutes. Okay. Yeah, so we'll be focusing on the, you know, kind of pharmacology part of local anesthesia and its action and its toxicity and all those things, and then the techniques. Now, I was planning to go ahead with medical emergencies if we can complete local anesthesia, but because of this problem, I'm not sure about that. But anyways, let's see how we go on today. Okay? So, all set to go? All of you able to hear me? On time? Okay. So, to start with, we have a little bit chart here which is there from your keynotes, of course. And in this chart, there are some things, you know, which are very typical MCQs. Main thing is here we have the type of nerve fibers. And it tells us about the myelin sheath over these nerve fibers. So, look at this. We are talking about A fibers over here. In that, we have A alpha, beta, gamma, and delta. Then we have the B fibers and the C fibers. Now, if we look at the diameter, so we are starting from A alpha being the thickest, and which is the thinnest one we are talking about? C fibers, which are the thin fibers. Hey, sort of refresh it once, you know. Guys, all of you able to hear me? Kamal, Swati, Ashwin, who all is there in the class? Let me just check out. Rohit, Kunal, Aditi, Ira, Bindu, Rinki, Priya, Aparna, Sanvi, Radhika. I'm reaching you, you know. Dara, Gandhali, Dara, sorry. Siley, Saurabh, they are talking something else actually. They are the two who cannot hear me. Lohita. Okay, so most of you are fine. I think so if they refresh, they should be able to get me. Since they are not able to hear me, I don't know how to talk to them. Okay, Okay guys, let's go ahead with this one. So we are talking about, okay, come back to, I know it's very distracting after, something happens, it's very distracting to bring the mind back to the nerves. Okay, it's all wandering here and there, but let's just focus it out. So we are talking about the fibers, we're talking about the A fibers, B fibers and C fibers. In A fibers, we have alpha, beta, gamma and delta. Now if you arrange them sequentially, it becomes very simple to remember this chart. Myelin sheath, you start from plus, plus, plus and goes to no myelin sheath in your C fibers. Now this is the question here. Now there is no myelin sheath in your C fibers. What does that mean? How much will be the speed? Will it be more speed of conduction of impulse? Will it be more or less when we don't have the myelin sheath? Yeah, it will be slow. Okay, now look at the diameter. Okay, diameter is, here we have alpha, we have the most thickest fibers, then we have beta and gamma, they are equal in size. Then we have these delta, A delta fibers. Then we have the B fibers, and ultimately we have the thinnest one as C fibers. So these two factors, the thickness of the nerve as well as the myelin sheath, these are the two factors which are kind of responsible for conduction velocity. Now again, when we come back to conduction velocity, of course it is just very proportional to what we saw as far as myelin and diameter is concerned. So there is nothing much to, kind of tricky over here. Chart is big, but it's easy to remember. Now again, we have the speed here. There have been speed asked about meters per second regarding A alpha. Okay, there is MCQ on this one, and it's good to remember about even the C fibers. Right, now when we talk about the onset time and speed, there are two different things. Onset time is, that's what I'm saying, Kamal, don't stress yourself by saying that I have to remember all these values. They are not much values actually. Okay, so as you come across your MCQs, you will be able to guess out from the choices. Because if we arrange the chart sequentially, it will be fine. There have been questions, yes, on the speed, conduction velocity. So there are chances that we may have questions from here. So it is an important chart. Okay. So when we talk about the onset time and conduction velocity are two different things. Onset time is time taken for an impulse to start, to provoke the nerve, to depolarize the nerve. Now if you see here, onset time is more with A alpha. Okay, and it is least with B fibers. This is the only sequence which doesn't go as, previous one. Here there is a little bit trick here. So we have the beta fibers, B fibers, which have an least onset time, and A alpha fibers, which has the most onset time. Now when we talk about the function, the main thing you need to remember is the last one. Okay, so pain is typically carried by your C fibers, and your A alpha fibers, they carry the motor impulse and the proprioception and all that. Okay, now when we talk about the nerve conduction, in that the structures and how they are barrier or how they carry the impulse and all that, that is also important. Voice breaking for all of you? Oh. Okay, if you, we can continue? Sanvi, you are in US. So that's the difference over here. Okay. Okay, let me know if it gets really bad or something, you know. Although as such my bandwidth shows good. But let me know, okay? Yeah. So when we talk about the nerve conduction, what we need to know here in this chart is again from your MCQ. Okay, you all know the covering of the nerve fibers as we have seen in general histology, isn't it? Now what more we need to know over here is the perineurium. Perineurium is the one that covers. Now if we talk about the nerve fibers, supposedly this is single nerve fibers, okay? The lining of the single nerve fibers is your endoneurium. Then we get the bundles. These bundles are called as fasciculi. The lining of the fasciculi is called as perineurium. Okay, and this perineurium is the main barrier to local anesthesia. It is here the local anesthesia takes most time to get inside the nerve. Okay, now if you look at here, perilemma. Perilemma is the innermost layer of perineurium and which is the main barrier to local anesthesia diffusion. Now here is like perineurium and perilemma, which one, you know? Now actually speaking, we are talking about perilemma as a whole, but if we compare even in the layers of perineurium, the innermost of the perineurium, that is perilemma, is the one that offers the main resistance to the local anesthesia diffusion. Now when we talk about the other sheath, the epineurium and epidural sheath, which are the outermost, they are okay, you know, they are not much of the concern. See, we have the nerve fibers. You all know what nerve fiber is, a single nerve fibers, the axon and all those things. So single nerve fibers, we have it here. What will be the membrane of single nerve fiber? The nerve membrane, isn't it? So that nerve membrane is actually the site of action of local anesthesia. Where does the anesthesia act? No, see, endoneurium is covering of the nerve fiber. Okay, guys, this is general histology. It's been done. Okay. Okay, this is your nerve. Yes, neurilemma. I'm talking about neurilemma. See, we have this one lining, which is actually the lining, the cell membrane of the nerve fiber. Saurabh, you see a small wrench-shaped the icon there in the top of your slot of your this thing. Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay, all of you guys, actually, if you all know, there is this wrench-shaped sign over there in your topmost right corner of the screen. If you click on that, you get device setting. Okay, I'm talking to other guys also. They are also getting low voice. Okay, when you click on that, you get device. In the device setting, you have an icon of speaker. Okay, so just slide that speaker volume to maximum. That's the volume of this application, basically. Okay, so if you're getting my voice low, that is one thing that will help you get the voice better. Okay, so all good. Shall I continue? So I was talking about neurilemma. Neurilemma is a nerve membrane of this axon, this nerve cell. And neurilemma is a site where our LA will act. Okay, so but for LA to reach there, it has to pass through all the layers. So now we are talking about which layer will delay the reaching of the LA to neurilemma the most. So we are talking about the barrier layer. Now what is the barrier layer? Now look at this, how our nerves are arranged. First we have the neurilemma. Now if I just draw a nerve cell over here, I'll draw it in yellow color. Okay, so if I draw the cross section of the nerve, this yellow is the neurilemma. Surrounding it is the condensation of the connective tissue, which is called as endoneurium. Okay, this green colored is your endoneurium. This connective tissue, with the help of this, all the nerve fibers are glued together and they form a bundle that is called as fasciculi. And this bundle is lined by your perineurium. Okay, so this perineurium, this orange colored perineurium is the main barrier for local anesthesia to pass through. Okay, so perineurium is a whole layer. Now, if we consider the whole layer, the innermost of this whole layer, that is perilemma. Innermost of the perineurium is called as perilemma, and this perilemma is the main barrier to local anesthesia. Clear? Now again we come to the resting membrane potential. This is something which has been every time discussed with you all. Okay. So what we all know is whenever we talk about the nerve, the interior of the nerve is negative and the exterior is positive. You all know that? So what are we talking about? We are talking about the potential difference. So, and how is this potential difference created? It is created by your sodium-potassium pump. So what does your sodium-potassium pump do? Your sodium-potassium pump pumps out the sodium and lets the potassium come in. But if we see sodium and potassium both are positive. So what it does actually, it pumps out 3 sodium and it lets 2 potassium come in. Okay, so it pumps out 3 sodium and it lets in only 2 potassium. So there is no balance of the negative this thing. So that is why we have the negative potential on the inner side. So that is what this slide says. So this is our resting membrane potential, and the value of resting membrane potential is minus 70 to minus 90 millivolts. Okay, negative than the exterior. No, Swati. One second. Sodium is not inside. Sodium is pumped outside. Whatever sodium was inside is pumped outside with sodium by the help of sodium-potassium pump. So these sodium-potassium pump, they all the time keep on functioning to pump out the sodium. So they are trying to push the sodium out. That is the reason all the positive is going out. But in exchange of sodium, there is potassium coming in. But in spite of potassium coming in, the positivity is not balanced because it's not the equal amount of exchange. More sodium goes out, but only 2 potassium comes in. So still there is some negativity created inside the nerve cell. No, this is normal resting nerve. This is not depolarization. This is the normal resting nerve. We have the sodium-potassium pump functioning during the normal resting nerve. Okay, do you see this diagram over here? Okay, so this is the sodium going out and the potassium coming in. So this is a simple diagram. We don't have to bother about it right now. So if you got the point which we discussed about resting membrane potential, you should be able to get the things about the depolarization. Now what happens in depolarization? I'll actually not okay, so we had been talking about this sodium-potassium pumps. Okay, other than that, there are something called as sodium channels. Okay, the sodium channels are the pathways which can allow the entry of the sodium. Now we saw that sodium-potassium pump has pushed out the sodium outside. So we have most of the sodium in the exterior of the nerve. Whenever we have an action potential coming in, okay, action potential, any kind of stimulus coming in, what happens is that stimulus displaces the calcium which is actually guarding these channels. So there is a calcium which is guarding this channel. So if you remove this calcium, it will help the gates to be opened. So it opens this channel and the sodium goes in. Because of the sodium suddenly rushing in, what happens is the negativity turns to positivity, and this is nothing but an electric impulse, isn't it? So that is what results in depolarization. Okay, getting my point here? So all of you know about this actually quite a bit, so it should be okay. In any doubt, let me know. Okay, so that's what we are talking about here. Now, whenever we have action potential coming to one part of the nerve, okay, and the sodium channels of that part opening, what will happen is sodium channel of that part open and there is an depolarization of this part. Since there is depolarization of this part, there is an impulse generated from this part which goes to the adjacent part. Okay, and that is how your action potential propagates through the nerve. Right. Now, let's come here. Now, when we talk about the propagation of action potential, we saw that when one part is depolarized, there will be another impulse created which will go to the next part. Isn't it? Now, if your nerve is not covered with a myelin sheath, okay, so every next part can be depolarized. Yeah, so it will have a very slow conduction because it will have to depolarize every adjacent part. But whenever we have a nerve that is covered by a myelin sheath, this myelin sheath is insulating, and in that particular case, action potential will jump from the areas which are deficient of the myelin sheath. And what are these areas which are deficient of the myelin sheath? These are nodes of Ranvier. Okay, so this is your saltatory conduction. Right, so that was your simple nerve conduction and your saltatory conduction of the action potential. So, okay, you all know what is action potential, you all know what is sodium potassium pump, you all know what are sodium channels, and you all know how depolarization takes place. Clear till now? All of you can see me? I know video is a little dark today. What do you want me to repeat, Kamal? Depolarization? Saltatory conduction. In saltatory conduction, nothing is happening, If you see, it's very simple. This is a nerve which doesn't have any covering. So whenever impulse goes, it doesn't jump. It just travels from one area to just the adjacent areas. Okay, so okay, keep checking your systems also, guys. Okay, yeah. So one area from the every adjacent areas, but whenever we have a nerve that is lined by the myelin sheath, what happens is impulse jumps from nodes of Ranvier, from one node of Ranvier to another node of Ranvier, because it cannot go here. So it directly jumps here. So that is why it speeds up the impulse propagation, that is saltatory conduction. Clear, Kamal? Now, that was about the other things. Now, if you talk about the repolarization, now think about repolarization. What is repolarization? Now, your all sodium has gone inside, your interior of the nerve has become less negative. How much it was? It was -70 to -90 something, isn't it? Now it has become less negative. Why? Because sodium comes in. So what will happen to this? It will become something like -50 to -70 something, in this range, -65 something. So it actually doesn't totally become positive. It becomes less negative. Okay. Since it becomes less negative because of the change, the impulse was propagating. But now again the nerve has to come back to its resting membrane potential. Okay. So to come back to the resting membrane potential, it has to repolarize. That is the process of repolarization. But the sodium potassium pump which we had been talking about in the resting membrane, how the resting membrane is maintained, that will take a while to happen. It will take some time for that sodium potassium thing to work and restore the balance. So before that, what happens is, as soon as the action potential goes forward, there is high permeability to potassium is restored. So what happens is potassium goes out. This is passive movement of potassium going out. Getting my point here? So our sodium had come in during depolarization. Now repolarization is because of potassium efflux. Yeah, I'm continuously talking, Dhara. You just keep listening to me. I'll be repeating it many times. Getting my point? So in depolarization, we have sodium that was coming in. Now what has happened? Immediately as the impulse goes forward, our nerve again becomes permeable to potassium and potassium goes out. Okay, sodium is not yet going out. It's potassium that is going out. But potassium is also positive, isn't it? So potassium is also positive. So even the potassium going out will restore the negativity inside. Isn't it? Because the positive charge is now going out. And that restoration of negativity, that repolarization, is brought about by your potassium efflux. Okay, so if I ask you what causes depolarization, if I ask you what causes depolarization, it is the sodium influx. Yes. And what causes repolarization? What causes repolarization is potassium efflux. Now this part is clear with you all. Okay. Now if this is clear, now think about one more thing. Remember we had been talking previously about resting membrane potential. Anytime we talk about the resting cell or something, we always say there is more sodium outside and more potassium inside. Any cell we talk about, ultimately whatever is not excited or resting, we always say that there is more sodium extracellularly and more potassium intracellularly. But after repolarization, the balances totally become ulta. Although we have got the charges back, but the sodium and potassium has gone on the wrong side, isn't it? So to restore that, your sodium potassium pump now starts operating. Okay, so what its sodium potassium pump does is it restores the balance. It will exchange. Okay, you are on this side, you go to this side. Okay, potassium, you are supposed to be inside, you come this side. Okay, so all this takes place when the sodium potassium pump is operating. You know, it is actually exchanging the positive for positive. So there is no sudden change of negative and positive, but ultimately it will restore the ultimate balance of negative inside resting membrane potential. All clear till now? So there are 3 steps. Repolarization is just this potassium efflux, is the earlier phase of repolarization. And that sodium potassium pump is the one that is maintaining the resting membrane potential. Okay? It is restoring the proper balance of this thing. Here it is repolarization. See, if you don't read it and listen to me, it will be better. Okay, one second guys, I'll just close this window. One gross overview on a whiteboard. Okay, just listen to me. Okay, very carefully. It's a very simple process, but it happens everywhere. Okay, it's a very simple process. Don't be very skeptical about it. This was your nerve. Okay, in the membrane there is this pump that is constantly keeping sodium out and keeping potassium in. Are you there with me? This pump is sodium potassium pump. Okay, this is resting membrane. Okay, now what happens is your action potential comes. What it does? This action potential acts on these sodium channels. Okay, these sodium channels which had calcium here, it displaces that calcium and opens up this sodium channel. Now this sodium channel increases it allows the sodium to go in. So suddenly the sodium rushes inside. Already the potassium is inside. Now the sodium also goes inside. So the membrane that was negative 70 now becomes negative 50 or negative 40. What has happened? The negativity decreases, and this is nothing but your action potential. You all know, right, how electricity works. It's just the electricity. Isn't it? Yeah. So now after the action potential is come and it has been propagated forward on the nerve. Okay. So action potential has gone now to the next part till wherever we wanted action to happen. Okay. But what happens to this part which is left behind? This part has to come back to its original state. How it will come back? Okay. The first step in coming back is the potassium permeability is increased. Potassium permeability is increased, so potassium goes out. Okay. Since the potassium goes out, your charge will come back. Because potassium is positive, it's going out, right? Getting my point? So this is your repolarization. Clear? But now, remember how our resting membrane was? Our sodium was outside and potassium was inside. But after repolarization, whole scene has become ulta, isn't it? So we have to restore that. How will we restore that now? How will we restore it? The sodium-potassium pump will start working again. Okay, because if we don't restore it, this nerve will not be excitable for the next time. For it to be excitable for the next time, we need the sodium to be outside, isn't it? How the depolarization will happen otherwise, next time. Okay, so clear with the things? Okay guys, chalo, move on. Okay, now remember, I told you, right, to restore it, we need the sodium-potassium balance to be created. We want the sodium to be outside. If the sodium is not outside, the nerve cannot be again excited or again depolarized, isn't it? So, that is the zone when this sodium and potassium balance is yet to be restored, stimulated, yeah. So, that is the zone where the nerve is refractory. Get the point? So that is the refractory period. None of the action potential will actually be working. Okay. So first 3 to 4, all this happens in milliseconds. Okay. It's not a very long process. It all just happens in milliseconds. Right? So what happens here? In first 3 to 4 milliseconds, the nerve will not be excitable. Nerve will not be excitable, or we cannot stimulate the nerve, and this period is called as absolute refractory period. And after that, when the partial balance is restored, in that particular phase, nerve can be stimulated, but for that we need a greater impulse, and that is called as relative refractory period. So I need you to understand the two terms, the absolute refractory period and the relative refractory period. Okay? Clear on this? They are very simple now. I don't think so there's much to know about. All you need to know is just the terms. Okay? And there is one more rule about nerve impulse. That this phenomenon is called as all or none. Okay? For our sodium channels, remember we had been opening the sodium channel with action potential. Whatever was coming. Okay? And that sodium channel needs to allow the sodium to go in. Okay, inside was minus 70. We need a certain drop, a certain minimum drop. See, if we are actually able to make it from minus 70 to minus 65, it will not work. There will be no action potential that will go forward. We need to create one significant drop. For example, we need to change it by some 20 to 25. So you can say when it reaches minus 50, how much will be 20, minus 45, huh? Yeah. When it reaches minus 45, then your action potential will propagate. Okay. So we need a certain impulse to bring that much drop. But if we have more of an impulse, more of the sodium channel open, and it drops from minus 70 to minus 20, does that make any difference? No. That doesn't make any difference in conduction velocity or, anything. So, but if we have minus 70 to just minus 65, there will be no impulse going forward. Okay. So there is a threshold that has to be crossed, and after that everything is same. Right? That is what is all or none law. So once the impulse is initiated, the amplitude of the discharge and the speed remains the same regardless of the intensity. So for initiation, we need certain threshold, and after that, it remains the same even if we increase the impulse. Okay?